Workshop is called to order at 1:01. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Hodges. Commissioner Oakley.
Here.
Commissioner Doubter.
Here.
Vice Mayor Weinstein. Here. Mayor Black.
Present. Next on the agenda, we have public comment. Public comment is for anything that is not on the agenda. Anyone who wishes to speak, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address, your home address, and please remember to speak directly into the microphone and be polite and kind. Thank you.
Is this on? Oh, good. Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners, and our home audience. My name is Missy Hahn. I'm president of the Treasure Island Madeira Beach Workshop. And I'm here today to ask you to revisit the amount that our partnership will be in your budget for next year. And if you'd like to do a formal presentation, we're happy to come and do that. I've given out a copy. I've actually redone that. I've met with you all individually, and I gave you a copy of the partnership agreement. This is an updated one, so I've actually put more into the package to show you how much we are willing and able to work with the city. I appreciate your time, and I'll take any questions if anyone has one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
There you go.
There you go.
Mayor and Commissioner, Mr. Manager. I come forward. My name is Guy Critelli, 13025 Pelican Lane. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting for 31 years on Pelican Lane to have something done. I own the house on Pelican Lane for 31 years. Every year, everybody says, "Oh, Guy, don't worry about it. We're going to take care of it." Every year go by, I haven't seen nothing. I built my house 10 years ago, it wasn't like that. Go up and down the street to the garbage, they put a new fence and they knock it down because the trucks keep on backing up to it, and they knock the fence down to park on the right of way. The garbage, I went down up and down this morning, Treasure Island, St. Pete Beach. Most of the garbage container they're all closed in. Every business has a closed-in container. I don't think I see one that rolls on the middle of the backyard of the old back of the business. Why can such a beautiful John's Pass? The people go around the block. It's not for me, it's for the people that come to John's Pass Village, what we call the beautiful John's Pass Village. Why can't we do something about it and get it clean out? I mean, the residents, they will leave it there. We got to look at this garbage and parking on the top of the curbs. And the commercial part, they don't do the right thing for us. They know there is residential on the other side. And we have to enforce something that the enclosed garbage container, number one. Number two, should we put a sidewalk there? Yes. Let's beautify John's Pass. I don't call it Pelican Lane, I call it John's Pass. It's all one. Thank you very much, and I hope something will be done soon.
Thank you, Guy.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? Public comment is now closed.
Madam Mayor, if I may, prior to us getting into the topics for discussion, if it is the pleasure of the board, staff is requesting that items C and D be reordered in the agenda to be discussed later on. I received a correspondence from Commissioner Hodges who is going to be a little tardy to this meeting, and she would like to be present for those items. So if it is the pleasure of the board, staff is requesting that if we get to those items, if we can, in essence, move on to items E, F, G, and H, and then revisit those items when the entire balance of the board is here.
That's fine with me. I was understanding that the seafood festival was going to be discussed tomorrow.
That is correct. That is correct. At the request of the entity, they have requested that, because there's a scheduling conflict, to come before the board tomorrow as part of your budget session, so they will be first, and then we would jump into the fiscal year 2019 budget.
All right, so the only thing we have to hold off on is the Old Salt Fishing Foundation.
The Old Salts, well, we're looking at the revised agenda that's actually on the dais that has the water taxi item, or Old Salts Fishing Foundation is item C, and item D is the water taxi agreement and discussion. The clerk has provided a modified and revised workshop agenda consistent with the remarks that we received from the representatives from the Seafood Festival. So the items that staff is requesting for us to postpone until the entire balance of the board would be the Old Salts Fishing Foundation King of the Beach event review and the water taxi agreement and discussion.
I agree with that.
Okay. All right, then going forward, the first item is the Pinellas County recycling techniques. Mr. Hash?
Madam Mayor, members of the board, the item before you this afternoon is to discuss with Pinellas County some of the recycling techniques and provide a better understanding as it relates to the recycling tactics and techniques that are being utilized here in Pinellas County. So we have some representatives here that are going to provide a brief overview with regards to what's happening in our county on the recycling side and how we as a local government can utilize some informational tactics and some tools that are already at our disposal to inform our residents about recycling and the impact here in Pinellas County.
No?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. For the third time, good afternoon. My name is Shelby Lewis, and she moved up. Right here is Jan Tracy. We both work with Pinellas County Solid Waste, and we're both in the Recycle Outreach and Programs section. So we are pleased to be here today, and we're going to talk to you about proper recycling. It's super important in the recycling market right now that we're all recycling only what is recyclable and nothing else. So we are going to go over everything that is recyclable and everything that isn't, and any variation in between that. So like this states, whether you've been recycling for 20 years or if you've just started recycling, it's always good to look into your program, whether it's your city or your specific hauler. Getting information from them on exactly what they accept is great. Recycling can be different between households, can be different between neighborhoods, can definitely be different between states. So if you've moved from up north and you come down or you're visiting, you guys have a lot of tourists, they might have a different recycling program than you have here. So it's really good to get that information out to them. So on this sheet here, you see our yeses. This is what we really encourage people to focus on. We want to keep it basic, very simple as possible. You can see we collect aluminum, tin, and steel cans, cardboard that's flattened, cartons without the straws, glass bottles and jars, newspaper, mixed paper, and paperboard, which is cereal boxes, and then plastic bottles numbers 1 through 7. So to get in a little more in depth into that, all of these items that you put in your recycle bin do need to be clean, empty, and dry. So your cardboard should not have any packaging material left in it. There should be nothing inside of it. Your aluminum, tin, and steel cans shouldn't have any traces of liquid or food inside of them. Same with the cartons. Glass bottles and jars, they also need to be empty. If you have a glass jar with jelly in it, if it's got a lot of jelly residue still on it, you want to put that in the garbage if you don't want to clean it out yourself. So clean that out first before putting it in the recycle bin. We also don't take any other types of glass in Pinellas County. So you might think a glass cup, a glass bowl, all these different things that are made of glass. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're recyclable in your single stream recycling at home. So no other types of glass except for glass bottles and jars. With paper, newspaper, mixed paper, and paperboard are all great. One good rule of thumb is to keep it bigger than the palm of your hand or bigger than your hand. Anything smaller than that can get mixed up in the sorting at the materials recovery facility, which I'll explain in a moment. But about the size of your hand, anything bigger than that. It is a little bit better to keep the paper uncrumbled, so you might think crumbling it up and throwing it away is better, but actually if you keep it flat, that's the best way for that paper to be sorted. And then plastic bottles is what we really want to focus on. These are the types of things that we want to get you to recycle. There are so many types of plastic out there, and a lot of them, unfortunately, are not great for recycling. So focus on the plastic bottles that you're going to find in your kitchen, bath, and laundry. So plastic bottles, plastic jars, and plastic jugs. So those things that come with food or liquid sealed inside of them. Anything else, you don't want to put it in your recycle bin. Our best saying is, when in doubt, throw it out. Unfortunately, if you put too many things that aren't recyclable in your recycle bin, that can make it become garbage. The sorting does have to happen at home. The responsibility is on each of us with our garbage or our recycling to make sure that it gets sorted properly. So plastics are a really big thing that we see a lot of different items in there that shouldn't be. So focus on those plastic bottles that you, again, buy at the store, the food or liquid sealed inside of them. And this here is just a short list of some of the frequent things that we see in recycling that really aren't good for your recycle bin. Now, the list of no's is obviously much, much larger. We want to have you focus whenever you think, what should I be recycling? Go back to this yes list, and if it's not on there, don't put it in your recycle bin. But these are just a few standouts that are really bad for the materials recovery facility and that we see so often. One of them being plastic bags, wrap, packaging, or film. So those are all a part of the plastics that some people believe this is recyclable because it's plastic, but it's definitely not recyclable. They actually really mess with the machines at the materials recovery facility. And let's see if I can make this bigger. Here we go. Okay, so you guys can see the picture on the left is contaminated recycling. And plastic bags, anything that can tangle, you see at the bottom there are, it's a cord, an electronics cord, and clothes. Those are all things that are going to be considered tanglers, so the plastic bags are in that. The left side is a picture of all of those being tangled on these sorting machines. A lot of times the material recovery facilities have to shut down to clean these off. It's not safe for the workers there, and it can cause lots of issues and damage to those machines. On the right, there's one without any tangler, so you can see the impact that our improper sorting can have on these facilities. Another good one to focus on is no paper towels, plates, cups, tissue, or wax paper. Even though they are made out of paper, it's not the same kind of paper that you're going to want to recycle. So that's just to keep that in mind. Just because it's a certain material doesn't necessarily mean it's recyclable. Still focus on the material and the item. So on the yeses, again, it's newspaper, mixed paper, and paperboard that we want. And lastly, no styrofoam, foam containers, or packaging. None of the local MRFs around here take single stream MRFs, take the styrofoam or foam packaging. So those cannot be recycled at home. Now, a lot of local grocery stores do have places to take your plastic bags and some of your styrofoam egg containers, so that's an option if you do want to recycle those. And we always tell everyone, if you're not happy that it's not recyclable, then try and find an alternative. At the end of the day, recycling is great, and when we do it right, it's really good. But our number one goal is to reduce. We want to reduce our waste and not even have, we don't want to have a lot of garbage, and we don't want to have a ton of recycling either. We want to just use less of everything. So just to keep it simple, focus on these items here, and that will give you enough confidence to know that you're recycling properly. And again, reaching out to your municipality, reaching out to your hauler, asking them for that educational material to make sure that you're following their program exactly the way they want you to. Now, briefly, I'll go over this here. This is what happens in a recycling facility. So a lot of people don't really think about, they put their stuff in and then that's it. That it's gone, it's out of sight, it's out of mind. But this is why it's so important to recycle right, because they have this big, huge facility with a lot of really amazing technology that can sort these items. But again, they're looking for the specific items. If there's the type of plastic in there that's not accepted, it's not going to recognize those items, and then that's going to cause what they call contamination. And contamination is simply anything that shouldn't be in the recycling that ends up there. So you can see they have human sorters as well as machines, and they're able to separate the different types of materials. So cardboard gets moved over those screens that you see there, and those are the same ones that we saw with that Tangler-free ad. That's where those tanglers get caught right at the beginning. They have magnets to take away the magnetic metals. Paper gets moved to a specific place. Glass and bottle jars are crushed and they're sent off to its own place. They have optical scanners, which are really, really amazing. And they can scan these items and they look for certain types of plastic and push them to the correct place. And then they have an eddy current, which pushes the non-magnetic metals to their specific place. So I encourage you to reach out to any local material recovery facilities to see if they have any tours available, because it's really amazing, or any type of education that they're willing to offer you, because they're amazing facilities and it gives you a really good background and education of why it's so important to recycle right. Okay, and lastly, I wanted to share with you all, this is not necessarily strictly recycling, but we have an A to Z guide for Pinellas County. We have it on our website, and I have given the contact information to Dave to potentially put this on your all's website so that your citizens can come straight to your site to get this. But this will help you know how to get rid of a certain item. So say you want to get rid of a mattress. Then you type in mattress in our A to Z guide, and it comes up with places near you that you can get rid of those properly. So it gives a nice guide to almost anything that you could ever imagine throwing away. So it's a really good resource to have, and like I said, Dave does have that information, so hopefully you guys will have it on your website soon enough for your citizens to check it out so that they'll know what to recycle and where to put everything else. And that's all I have, so thank you all so much, and if you have any questions, please let me know.
I had one.
Okay.
Pizza boxes.
Great. Pizza boxes. So they're made of cardboard. So that is recyclable, but all recycling has to be clean, empty, and dry. So pizza boxes typically come with a lot of grease on them, which makes them not clean. So in that instance, it would be garbage. Sometimes you can tear the lid off if that hasn't been contaminated with the grease, but otherwise you just would be better off throwing it in the garbage. What happens is the grease gets into the machines when they try and make it into something new, contaminating every single piece of fiber that's in there. So it's a big problem. So great question.
But I see a lot of them in recycle bins.
Right. So empty, clean, and dry, #1 rule for any recycling. If it doesn't have all three of those qualities, then it's not recyclable. Any other?
I don't have a question, but I think it's good to mention, I believe Publix recycles styrofoam.
Right, so Publix and some other grocery stores and local retail stores will take back some of the styrofoam egg cartons and some of like the styrofoam veggie trays. They'll also take back their grocery bags. So it is a great alternative instead of putting it in the garbage. But still, you could buy reusable bags instead of using the plastic bags, or, just trying to find ways to reduce. But that is a good alternative instead of putting it in your garbage.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think
I
they
didn't
do.
mean to
I don't think they do egg cartons. They do bags.
I'm just bad.
Right.
Oh,
Any other questions?
Could we get a few of these left here?
Yes, actually, you have some in the main lobby. There's
A lot of good information in this, too.
yeah, so our recycle guide is available in the main lobby. So feel free, anybody here who wants to pick that up, and tells you everything I just talked about. So it's got great information in there.
Great.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Shelby.
you.
Next, we have the Waste Connection contract discussion and renewal rates. Director Marcicano?
Madam Mayor, members of the board, I will introduce this item. Pursuant to the direction provided by the Board of Commissioners, staff met with representatives from Waste Connection to discuss our contract for recycling. The contract is set to expire on December 31st, 2018, and currently the residential rate for the over 1,900 single-family homes here in Madeira Beach is $2.93 per single-family home per pickup once a week, with a total monthly charge to the city of over $5,600. The 38 condos that are in our city that participate in the recycling program currently pay $15.32 per pickup, with a monthly charge of about $2,400. Because of some significant changes that we're seeing in the commodity market and the changes because of the Republic of China and the actions that they've taken with respect to recycling, we've seen some significant shifts in the commodity market. And that is why we're seeing some increases in what the proposed rates are. We have representatives here from Waste Connections to discuss what the renewal rates are, but based on the analysis and the information that we have been able to obtain and in discussions internally with staff, we would recommend that we enter into a one-year agreement with the understanding that we are to proceed forward with a full solicitation for recycling hauler for subsequent years. At this particular moment, we think by the time we're able to put together a comprehensive solicitation and then also looking at the possibility for us to effectively do it in-house if we can, that will take some time, but obviously with some of the changes in the international market, the desirability of recyclables are no longer as prevalent as they used to be. Also, some other concerns that we do have is that if we are to move forward with the increase in the rates, it's a pretty sizable rate increase, all things considered. You're looking at about 116% increase in the residential rate and about a 56% increase in your condo rate. Nonetheless, the rates still remain at approximately $6.63 per household per month, and the condos would go up to $23.98. Per the city's comprehensive plan, it is a requirement that the city effectively participate in a recycling program. What that looks like is something that is up for discussion here from the board. If you wish to enter into a contract extension, we can look at some other options, whether it is some drop-off locations for recycling, whether we decide to make some modification. Your comprehensive plan is one of two documents that the state requires you to have, a budget and a comprehensive plan. That comprehensive plan is something that's approved by the state, but comes basically from the community, where you really talk about levels of service and those things. So at this particular moment, I will definitely turn to Director Marcicano and the representatives from Waste Connection to provide a little bit of information, a little bit more additional information. But the proposed rate increase to the consumer in totality will be a fiscal impact of about $71,000, $71,000 to $75,000, if the board was to pass the cost on to the residents. So I will turn the microphone over to staff, and then we stand prepared to answer any questions that the board may have.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for letting us come before you today. I have Ian Boyle here. If I could get him to join us at the podium. Mr. Evans went through everything very well. Thank you for picking up the ball on this. Really appreciate it from the Public Works Department. It is an increase that's going to impact all of our folks, as Mr. Evans indicated, at 116%. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ian to maybe go into a little bit more detail?
Yes, thank you very much. Just to let you know, I've been doing this job for 9 years, covering the Tampa Bay area, and normally, in all the years I've been doing this, never come to a board, never been in a situation like this where we had to ask for price increases like this. We're just kind of a victim right now of the market and the commodity market. The county's presentation was a very good one. It's important to note that Madeira Beach does have very clean material, and really the problem is on the back end. I mean, for us to do the rate that we were doing, we were selling the material on the back end. Unfortunately, the back end, it's either way low, or in some cases we're paying to get rid of it. And even when it is clean, they're not taking all of it. A lot of times we'll have material like, have an agreement with someone to sell, let's say, 100 tons of material, and they show up and say, we only need 20. That 80 tons sits around. So decisions are made by MRFs and recycling folks all over the world. At some point, when do you take it out of your warehouse, and you got to either bury it or burn it? And that's what's a lot of stuff we're dealing with. That's why our disposal is going up. Unfortunately, in Pinellas County, it costs more to process recycling than it does to take it to the waste energy plant. And that's the reality right now. Pinellas County has a very low disposal rate of $37.50, but it costs more to process it right now. And that's the world we're kind of living in. The market presently right now is trying to adjust to China making the decisions that they've made. And over a period of time, hopefully those commodity markets come back, but they're not there right now. So that's kind of where we're at.
I would like to also dovetail off that just a bit to comment on the $37.50 a ton that the county is currently charging and has been, I believe, for the past 8 years. They've indicated to us through several different meetings that that rate is going to change next year, most likely. So that's something that we need to have in our minds and be thinking about, because it's definitely not going to get any cheaper. They're not going to change the rate and make it lower. So that's something that is coming forth, and I'm sure you guys are in the same position we are.
And Madam Mayor and members of the board, if I may bring us to conclusion on this particular item, basically what we're asking direction from the board, are you amenable to staff proceeding forward with executing a one-year contract with the understanding that we would go out to a competitive solicitation next fiscal year? And then how do you wish for us to proceed forward with the increase? Is that something that the board wishes us to provide notice to all the affected parties that effective on, which would be January 1, rates would increase to X in the event that we are to go with this proposal that's before us with Waste Connection? And one thing I do want to mention, because I think it's germane to the conversation, when we did have the discussion with Waste Connection, they have agreed to hold the rate for a significant amount of time, considering the commodities market has shifted and other proposals that they've proffered to other communities have seen some increases since initial conversations. So they've agreed to be able to hold this rate. In most cases, this rate is only good for 30 days, and they have agreed to stay consistent with the rate that's being proffered here today. So twofold, staff is asking for direction if you'd like for us to proceed and bring you forward a contract with the understanding we'll go forward with a competitive solicitation. And then two, how do you wish for us to handle and manage the increase in the cost?
Well, I'm not sure how we should go forward as far as the increase, but I think we should go forward.
I don't think we have much choice.
No.
When the, I've got a question. When the amount will be increased, January of 19?
That is correct.
Okay, January of 19. Is there any kind of a possibility that that can be a user's option to pick and choose, to have it or not? I mean, is that possible? Is it all the city or none of the city? In other words, if we choose that it's you know, if we think about it and realize that it is too much, certainly for the city to absorb, and certain individuals want to use the recycling that's offered by the county, you know, at recycling bins, can others still take advantage of your?
Well, I will give you experience. The city of St. Petersburg did a kind of curbside recycling program where it was up to the user. Now, obviously, Madeira Beach is a lot smaller than St. Petersburg, but what happened there was it ends up, you don't have complete routes. You're not driving down the street. It becomes like one giant Easter egg hunt. You know, go here, go there, go there. So it wouldn't be, the price that we have now wouldn't be conducive to that. Because what we base it on is basically we're driving by every house and taking every household into consideration for that price. Now, the one thing that there is there's the condos. Now, the condos have the option to go out, and we understand that we kind of built in there that there may be, I don't know, 10% of the condos might back out. But if they all back out because of the price increase, then that does change the contract, and we just have to revisit it. But, you know, for the most part, we put together the best price based on what we have right now. But I understand what you're saying. Make it the option. Unfortunately, from our standpoint, it's hard to route, it's hard to price when you don't know who you're picking up and how many we have out there, because the cost of the truck is always the same. You know, when your staff sends out a truck, it's always the same price if you're picking up one home or, 1,000 homes. It's the same cost. So we wouldn't be able to do that.
It's really not, okay.
Yeah, it's not.
Because years and years ago, how many years have y'all have had our contract for how many years?
2010.
Okay, almost 10 years, okay, because I think that maybe before that, it was, kind of a pick and choose kind of thing, and it didn't work then either, because everybody was just using everybody else's recycling.
Well, that happens too. I mean, you'll find,
Not good.
one person pays for it and then everyone kind of jumps on board, and it's.
But I wanted to ask.
Yeah, it's just not a business model that folks in our industry can work by.
Okay.
Are you seeing
Thank you.
the volume, is it up, down, or staying for the recycling for the beach area?
Madeira, the beach, actually, recycling is very good. Participation rate on the beaches is very good. It kind of fluctuates, obviously, with the snowbird season and so forth, but recycling down here is very good. Matt Arcarolo, who's our district manager, follows this on a weekly basis, but you would say it's about this,
And our residential's clean. Our residential recycling is fairly clean. I think, am I right?
It is. We never really, we don't have a problem with the cleanliness of it. It's just that the back-end markets, even the stuff that's very, very clean, it's not movable. You can't, and what the stuff that is movable, they're not taking all of it. There is such a high supply in the entire world that people can pick and choose. And China has created this level of 99.5% contamination free. And that is a difficult number to hit. So what brokers do, they'll go to MRFs all around the world and pick and choose the stuff that gets as close as 99.5 as they can get, which leaves a lot of stuff, Before all these recycling contracts, we were happy to have, if we had 20%, anything below 20% contamination, we were, great. That's a good thing. Now, all these recyclers are now trying to get to almost 0% contamination. It's a big shift, and it was like that. It wasn't a change. I don't know. I sent it to staff, but CBS Sunday Morning actually just did a whole story on this yesterday, and it was actually paints the picture rather well. Now, right now it is. And from all the people in my company that have done this for a long time, all say it's a commodities market. It'll eventually come back. What they do say, they've never seen it this low, and never seen it this low based on what's happening. And unfortunately, we're a larger company. We could absorb it and so forth, and we can ride out that wave. But you're going to have a lot of smaller recyclers and processors. They're going to go out of business. There's no ifs, ands, or buts.
And I think I stepped on Rick a little bit there. Are we correct? Are we pretty, as far as our residential cleaner on the recycling? Yeah. Yes?
Yeah, Madeira Beach, it does have clean material. You guys do very well down here. Areas of that have more, full-time residents, year-round residents, owners are usually a lot more clean on their materials. Areas where there's rental properties, a lot of rental properties, there when you run into some issues. But Madeira Beach has always been clean, right? Yeah.
Do you find issues in the condos? I live in a condo, and I know a lot of people put their recyclables in a plastic bag and put it in the recycle. But now I'm seeing that's an issue.
You want to speak to that?
It is, there's a little bit more contamination into the condos, just because there's multiple people using the containers to where there's if somebody's not monitoring it, that can happen. But historically, there hasn't been an issue to where we've had to say it was so contaminated we couldn't deal with it. But that's going to get harder and harder as the market continues the way it is.
And what ends up happening is that from a processing standpoint, we do have a 7-figure machine that we send this through and optical sorters and everything, but you always have to have hand pickers. So what you need to do is the hand pickers are looking for different kind of stuff. And then it's not the easiest job, and you have high turnover, and you actually need more now because of the fact that there's less that's being accepted. So that's where some of our processing costs go up. So in situations like that, if we find a condo or any place that's got a lot of bags, we have to address it. Dealing with that right now with one of our contracts down in Sarasota. It's an issue, but here it hasn't been enough of an issue for us to deal with.
Okay. Any more discussion?
I think I'm of the opinion also that we need to solicit for another server. But I do think that probably after the period of, I've always been an advocate of curbside, recycling. I think it's just been wonderful for the community. It's been wonderful for residents and everybody. But I do think that we're going to have to look, I would personally want to look at, the big, huge bins within our own city and at a certain period of time and because those people who are very dedicated to recycling are going to recycle, okay? And we will take them to the dumpster, okay? And those that aren't, then it's going to have to go into the garbage. I think it's a very sad state of affairs because I've seen it so successful in so many areas of the world, but unfortunately, it's just not here. So I think
Pinellas, you have, at least with the fact you have a waste energy plant, that there is a certain sense of recycling. I know with folks that are the true recyclers, you're not reusing. You've taken that one green arrow out of the circle. But you are, if it does, it's not being buried, majority not being buried, it's actually being burnt and creating electricity. So for that, I tip my hat to Pinellas County. It's one of the ways their tip fee is able to stay so low because they're obviously selling it for the electricity. But what you are going to face, and this is just a lot of municipalities are going to face this, is that the amount of trash is now going to go up. So all these waste energy plants that were able to accept this amount of tons, eventually they're going to be taking more than they planned for. So does their waste energy plant have the ability to do it? Will they have to put in a new burner? One of our solid waste contracts up in Pasco County just let us know their recycling partner had gone away to expect us to have a lot more trash. So it's the reality everywhere. There's a city in Polk County that's deciding in the next couple of weeks to suspend all recycling. A bunch of in South Florida and Broward County have suspended recycling, till they can figure something out. So that's what's happening with a lot of these municipalities, and you probably see it coming from the east side.
Wasn't it just in the paper that Treasure Island's looking at doing away with it, recycling at the end of the year? I think it was in the Beacon. This past week.
I'm not 100% sure. I never read the article, but I know that some programs that even specifically the city of Largo used to have a rebate program that used to be a very lucrative program. And if you guys can speak to that, because you have firsthand experience.
Yeah, we're the processor for Largo. Any contracts that have a rebate program, anyone that can tell you that the rebates are basically have gone downhill. Because there was a period of time where with a lot of those contracts, they have a set processing fee of like $50. You take $50 off whatever the rebate is, and that's whatever. But now it costs more than $50 to process. So there, you're going to have to, you're kind of dipping in now more into the rebates. Plus, on top of that, the commodities aren't selling. So cardboard, which we budgeted for a certain amount, is 50% of where it is. Paper, which you could always get money from, is either at 0 or -10. Glass has always been a negative. You're happy if you can get it away for 0, but you still got to drive it to Sarasota, where there's the only person who can take it. And that's basically what we're dealing with.
Any more discussion? All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Well, I think we need some,
Yeah, we needed some clear direction from the board if you wish for us to proceed forward, as staff is recommending that we go forward with a year contract renewal with the understanding that we will go out for competitive solicitation, and then to inform the residents of the rate increase effective January 1. That the cost would be passed on to the residents.
I think we have a consensus.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, if I understand it right, we're going to be going on to item E,
That is correct.
okay? City of Madeira Beach Special Events Ordinance Review. Mr. Hatch.
Okay. Well, pursuant to direction from you guys, we have, good afternoon, first of all. But pursuant to direction provided by the board, we are bringing forward the special events ordinance. A little bit of background on this right now. My staff and I are currently working through with each department the requirements and expectations they have with events, reviewing the current ordinance and ensuring that the actions and the policies that we put forth with our application match those. And as you can imagine, with the growth of this facility, and the ordinance has not, with the exception of some minor changes, it hasn't really grown with the facility usage and the available areas that we have for special events. So I've already spoken with law enforcement, fire department. We've got improvements there. I have a follow-up meeting with Linda, with the zoning and portions of that, because there are different alcohol requirements. There's different requirements per zoning that we have to make sure that we're hitting. And then we are continuing to go through those departments, and we're going to essentially make sure that it is correct, rewrite it, and then make sure that our application itself matches that fully. It does have some holes in it that we work through, and we do require some things for some special events that aren't explicitly listed on there, but are listed in the ordinance. So we just want to make this policy, the whole thing, streamlined, straightforward. There's no surprises for anybody, and we want to make sure that it's right. But we also want to discuss with you all and see if, first of all, if there's any questions you have, and second of all, if there's any direction that you may have within that is a concern of yours. So.
When was it last reviewed?
We have a part of the packet. There was a draft 2017 ordinance that was never adopted, but it was only minor changes. This would be, in my opinion, much larger. I think it only addresses one section. Let's see. Yeah, we were looking at the number of people that it was 50 and 75 was the topic of how many people a special event is discussed. As far as our review goes, that number is almost, I don't want to say meaningless, but it's arbitrary to the whole process, because there are a lot of other qualifiers for special events. And we were doing that because we were having people that were going to have a beach party, a birthday at a pavilion for 51 people, and we're curious why we were making them go through this whole process. So, and then as far as the definition of a special events permit, our beach weddings, any wedding outside on property here, any event that you have on the rec center fields, Old Salt, Seafood Fest, the Rotary Carnival, events such as those, there's more than one application, because if somebody's going to have a birthday party at a pavilion, I'm not going to run them through the entire all 8 departments and have zoning allow whether or not we can cut a cake underneath the pavilion at the beach. So it streamlines certain things. So there will be potentially 4 different applications that all apply a special event permit. The larger scale events will have a much further, the current event application that we have is extensive, but in my opinion, it doesn't answer all the questions that we have. So, and that's something that we've been working through. I know early on when you guys were elected in, there was some issues, and it is progressively improved. But we're still not exactly where we want to be, and we just want to make sure that we're getting that taken care of. So, if you guys have any questions or any particular concerns.
Jay.
I do.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You want me to go ahead? Okay. I had a couple questions, okay? Thank you for, being diligent to really go through this process. I wanted to know, are you checking with any other cities with regards to their special events ordinance? Who has control of it, what their applications look like?
Yeah, absolutely. One prime example, the city of Clearwater, I mean, they're probably doing an event right now. They do them all the time with Coachman Park and the water. And their application, I believe ours is 3 pages, theirs is about 8. They ask a lot more questions than we need to, but we're going to find a middle ground that works for us. We actually, I'm part of a special events panel that meets for Pinellas County. So every event coordinator with each city staff gets together once every couple months to discuss issues with events. And we've been pulling event applications and ordinances from them to compare and contrast. And everyone's is a little bit different, but kind of goes along the same lines. So
Okay, but you will be going to cities with currently our population, maybe our size, our demographics and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
To see where they are. And how long do you think maybe it will be before you'll be able to bring this back to us? 60 days?
Yeah, 60 days would be
whatever?
a good number. Like I said, we've already kind of started the process, but we've if it gets to the point that I think we're going to effectively rewrite certain portions of the ordinance, it's still going to look similar. We just, the ordinance isn't terrible, but there's a few things that need to be addressed. But then if you look at our application side by side with it, it doesn't technically match.
Right,
So,
it doesn't, yeah. Thank you.
yeah, and that's we got to get that right. So
Okay, because, 2016 was when it was last changed, okay, to what we currently have now.
Yes.
And before that, I think it was 2007 when we changed it, 2007 or 2009. And the biggest thing that I had, when I asked that this be discussed again and brought up, was that I hope that you're in agreement, or not in agreement too, but that you'll look after, okay, to determining, I guess, what cities are like us, which currently right now give the authority of the approval for all events to the city manager. When ours always, and it was based on a lot of other models from other cities, gave that to the Board of Commissioners because it was a policy decision. It was not considered an administrative position that the authority, the approval of the events. And that's why I thought it was so important that we at least look at it again, so.
yeah, we'll take a look. And just off the top of my head, it presents a few challenges. I see both sides of it. I understand the approval side from the board. Timeline being one thing is a problem. One thing that it is defined a process no later than this to having a special event, but we get a lot of people that for whatever reason just forget, and they go, hey, we got an event in 3 weeks. And I look at it and go, okay, this is not Seafood Fest that's happening in 3 weeks. It's another event that we can adequately plan, and we run through the process quickly for them.
Right. Okay.
And that's just one example. And then the other, barring any error on my part, when we bring this to the board, there shouldn't be any reason for, I guess, any need for a vote. As far as, if there's going to be clear definitions and clear requirements for a special event, nothing should reach you guys that has any reason to say no. Like, we will have fully vetted the event as a staff to get it to the point where essentially it's just a rubber stamp of approval and move on. So I believe that was the change in the past, where the commission just got sick of discussing events where they, okay, we've got 4 event applications today. One's for a wedding, one's for Seafood Fest, one's for a birthday party. And all right, we can really only say yes to these anyway, so. But I will take a look and go through that further, because I know other cities have that.
Madam Mayor, if
Okay,
I-
well, can I just finish what my thought? Okay, I was under the impression that you were going to bring to us, I guess, more than just the application.
Oh, yeah, we'll have
Okay,
the
you're
full
going to bring
thing.
an ordinance, okay.
Yes.
Because I'm not concerned with, as I'm sure you're not, and I'm not trying to bring up or open up anything, but I'm not concerned with a wedding that's taking place in 2 weeks.
Right.
Okay? Or a birthday party that's going to be on the beach. But what I am concerned about is with an event that takes 6 to 8 months to even, put together, okay? That's what the board, that's what I think needs to be a policy decision, or I hope that it does. That's what I'm recommending.
Okay,
Thank you,
yeah,
Jeff.
I'll make notes and we can set
Thank you.
benchmarks within that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And Madam Mayor, if I may also, the reason that we're going to look at larger entities is because chances are they have seen every event or every type of event, so they will be able to provide some insights from some lessons learned. So we're going to incorporate kind of the best from everyone that's gone through this process, because there may be a certain threshold of events that you as the board want to see, and there's certain things like a birthday party that you don't want to come before the board. So we can make sure that when we bring a policy to you, we can provide the rationale as to why these events should come before the board and why the birthday parties or the simplistic events are just done administratively. So we'll bring you all different options. Staff can put that together in easily about 30 to 45 days, and then schedule something for a discussion with the board with a draft ordinance and then the rationale behind why we're recommending probably parsing off some events that are just approved administratively, assuming that they go through the process. But also, I think one of the big things that I've heard from board members here is the process, that how we get from point A to point B, and it be explicitly prescribed so there's consistency and uniformity as to how the process is to be handled. So we'll actually provide a flow chart that if you're going to ask for board approval because you're requesting the waiver of fee, this is what needs to be provided. There's a contract that needs to be signed. This is when it needs to go before the board. And then the board is recommending, if there's any concession on public expenditures that you provide, a pro forma or those types of things that we've done with our last agreement. So nonetheless, we're going to work through those things and then bring you back some recommendations here in the near future.
Very good.
When do we anticipate having a new ordinance? In 30 to 45 days for us to look at?
I think we can get you, the research and the ordinance and have it scheduled for the workshop with the board within about 45 days, and then ultimately bringing to the board for approval of the ordinance at the meeting immediately following the workshop. So
I'd also like the city to kind of look at possibly taking over all beverage sales at the larger events, and coming back and telling us what the feasibility on something like that would be alcohol, be soft drinks, whatever, that we would handle that.
Clearwater does that.
yeah, and I've seen some cities do that if they don't do it exclusively, they have the first right of refusal to be able to do it on city properties. Yeah.
Right.
We can look at that, absolutely.
Thank you.
I would like to see in the contract that the city must fill out a special event permit, as well as just like a resident or anybody else that comes before us. Because there's basically the same steps that you all need to follow to make sure. You can't hold somebody from the outside responsible if we're not responsible, is the way I see it.
Yeah, I understand that. And
Okay.
and to be totally honest, it would just be another step in the process. When we host an event, I would say we're more thorough. It's not necessarily on paper. There's 20 meetings leading up to an event, and we have
Right,
followed through and all that
It should be
stuff.
documented the
Yeah.
same way anybody else.
Okay.
And any parking lot that is given to any event for the seafood festival is a good example because they take so many lots. That parking lot is to be open to handicap parking regardless. If somebody pulls in their handicap, they need to be able to park there.
Okay.
And then any event that gets fees waived by the city does a pro forma contract.
And we can actually, as part of the ordinance, require that a contract as provided as an exhibit is, required in the event that there is in essence, if you said a co-sponsored event, you can request that in lieu of this, as the city's deciding to waive these fees, we are requesting that you provide us X, Y, and Z, and then report back. So that's something that we can easily incorporate into the language in the ordinance as well as the contractual agreement with any time there's a fee waiver of any type.
Well, in your diagram that you were just talking about a minute ago, it's gonna go down. It says fees waived, bam, shoot you over, you gotta fill out another part of the contract.
So we can definitely get that to the board at a workshop to have some discussions, look at the ordinance, the revised ordinance, as well as some recommendations that we have seen and some best practices from our other peers, and then look to incorporate the language as it relates to if there's any fee waivers, that a contractual agreement that a performer is to be provided, et cetera. And then, the parking component, we can look to make sure that's addressed as part of the new policy recommendation that will come before this board.
Any more discussion? Okay. Next is Resolution 2018-10, establishing and adopting a civility code. City Clerk?
Okay. Madam Mayor, members of the board, the item before you is a civility pledge. Basically, Resolution 2018-010 is a resolution that staff is recommending that the board consider. This particular resolution will be basically govern the way in which relationships are to be managed in this chamber as well as in any interactions with staff. One of the things that we've seen continue to occur throughout local, state, and federal government is civil discourse. And civility pledges date back all the way to the days prior to George Washington actually becoming president. And so in my past experience, one of the things that I've seen to be very effective is a civility pledge. Obviously, we know that in the board's rules of procedure, you have information that basically governs the actions and the behaviors of the board, but staff is recommending for us to take it a step further to incorporate this civility pledge for us as city employees, but also the residents that enter this chamber interact with your staff. One of the things that we are recommending as part of the civility pledge that it will be posted on the podium, so when someone comes to address the board, they understand that we have a commitment to civility. Also, there will be a placard that will be on the podium that as we look to engage our residency, it's just a friendly reminder that civility is an important aspect of governance. So one of the things that staff is really looking to embrace and for us to move us forward is to understand the importance of this particular pledge. And I think it sends a clear and distinct message to all folks that we may philosophically agree to disagree. However, we'll do it in a civil and respectful manner. There's many cities, even some in Pinellas County, that actually have the civility pledge as you walk into the building and as you engage with those representatives. Your hope is that they operate in such a space. So this, of course, is a resolution, so it doesn't bind the board. It instead states your position that effectively these are some things that you value. And I will read the civility pledge here as it's been published in the agenda. It says, "We will always show respect to one another. We will direct all comments to the issue before us, and we will avoid personal attacks. Politeness costs so little." And that's from Abraham Lincoln. And I can tell you that most recently we had a board meeting whereby a member at the podium got into a conversation with a member of the public and said some things that I would say could be construed as disparaging remarks concerning their past employment. And so having that situation where we value civility, maybe that one comment that's on the dais stops that interaction. and allows for people to participate in their government. Because I can assure you, if there's contention and there's volatility, the people that want to communicate with staff and the elected officials will avoid hostile situations. So this is a step for us to say that our commitment is to civility, to good governance, to transparency, and a participatory government here in Madeira Beach. So staff is recommending that the board provide us direction and insight as if you wish to proceed forward with the civility pledge. If that is the case, we'll move forward and place this on a regular agenda for the board to discuss this, or to adopt this ultimately.
I say let's move forward with it and take it to the BOC and get our first reading.
I do
We
too.
need
I,
one resolution.
I think that, well, yeah, to have a resolution, we still have to wait for a meeting. But we discussed this civility code many times in the past. I was informed with it after we had the Florida League of Cities and our little seminars and stuff. But at first, when I first read about it, I guess last month, I guess I have to admit, I thought it was maybe a little bit of overkill. I thought we'd gotten to the point where our culture and our people might change, but I know that in years past, I've probably come before this commission 100 times in the last 30 years, and it seems like I was always respected until a certain period of time, and I thought about it a lot, before I thought that this civility code might be really something that's important for all of us, because I got to tell you, I was reprimanded and scolded many times, and I was called some really bad things. So I agree that I think it's warranted, I think it's necessary, and I think that if we do have the little plaques by the podium, and to remind us as well, on the back of the podium, to remind us as well that we're all civil. It's just as easy to be respectful, and it's a lot nicer. So yeah, I think we should move ahead.
I think we should move ahead as well. The only thing that bothers me, and it didn't really start to bother me until today, is that it says that we will avoid personal attacks. I don't think that gives you the idea that, well, maybe you can. I'm just going to try to avoid it, but I couldn't do it, so I'm going to attack. So if we could reword that in a more positive way.
We can certainly modify that. That was just the direct comments or remarks from Abraham Lincoln, so I didn't want to.
That's how he spoke back then.
I did not want to alter his.
I'm not talking about him. I'm saying did he say we will avoid personal attacks?
I would have to.
Because that's not in quotes.
I would have to, you're probably right. I'd have to confirm with the
It says politeness
clerk.
costs so little. I'm not trying to change that.
We'll get him in here to ask.
I certainly don't want to change it.
No, but that is, I thought of that too, Mayor, because that's what kind of changed my feeling, okay, when I did read that part, because, like I said.
So maybe it's we will refrain
called a liar
from.
before,
or-
by a commissioner.
Okay,
and I don't
yeah, we
think
can
that
make
was-
some quotes. We can make
Yes,
some
that's
modification.
That's a positive
Yeah,
statement.
absolutely.
I think so too. Thank you.
Okay.
Any more discussion? Oh, don't look at me like that.
We'll get Abe in here to talk to you.
You do that. Next we have the interlocal agreement with Pinellas County for planning and mapping services and/or special project work.
Madam Mayor and members of the board, I'm stepping in here for Director Portell, who is out of town. This particular item is an agreement with Pinellas County. It's an interlocal agreement with Ford Pinellas to assist the city on an as-needed basis at no cost for the provisions of planning services and mapping services. This is a interlocal agreement that we've executed a number of times. We just wanted to bring this to the board before we put it on an agenda because we know that the board would like to see any type of contracts or agreements that effectively binds the city. But there is no fiscal impact because we don't anticipate any planning services being provided, but in the event that we did, this agreement allows for us to effectively do that. And the cost realistically is the cost that would be incurred for the actual staff time that the county would allocate to assist us on some of the mapping services. We do have a position that the board was so graciously so gracious in allowing for us to put into the fiscal year budget this year a planner that effectively is going to provide a lot of these services, but this is, again, a backup, but there's no commitment in funding by effectively agreeing to the terms and conditions in this agreement. And staff recommends that the board allows for us to bring this forward for ratification at your next regular meeting.
As far as I'm concerned,
We
I'm
do this every year.
good.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, you do this every year?
Yep.
I agree with it.
All right.
Don't y'all?
I'm so glad.
Make me happy.
All right, so I think we have agreement on that one.
Excuse me, Mayor. I just want to apologize to the board for being late. And I'll catch my breath in just a minute. And Jonathan, thank you for making the adjustments to the agenda.
No problem, my pleasure. Madam Mayor, if I may, the last item that the city attorney is going to be presenting is a pretty quick item, and we do have some members of the public that are here for that item, so we can jump to item H, and then we can get into the two other items that we have
That
postponed.
makes sense. Is Director Portal here?
Director Portel's not here, so I'll cover her item for her.
Okay.
I'm not the certified floodplain manager, but as city attorney, I can address some of the legal issues that arise with this agreement. What you have is a 3-page agenda backup. You have a memo, and then on the 3rd page is an agreement. That's a verbatim agreement from FEMA that they ask us to sign, have property owners sign when they obtain building permits that would allow them to enclose space below the base flood elevation. So for, just for general purposes, as an example, say you're building your home up to FEMA base flood elevation. Say, for example, it's 7 feet up in the air or 10 feet up in the air. And if you are going to obtain a building permit to enclose any of that area below base flood, then you're required to have this non-conversion agreement, which says that you will not convert that space into habitable space. The idea is to prevent the use of that space for habitable space, such as an extra bedroom, a living room, an additional kitchen, a mother-in-law apartment. Believe it or not, those type of things do exist in Monroe County, where I used to be an assistant county attorney. We had many illegal below flood enclosures. I think it's a little bit human nature. We all want to improve our abodes. We're constantly retiling, putting new flooring in, redoing the kitchens, bringing in new appliances, putting an extra refrigerator in the garage. I'm even guilty of, although I live above base flood elevation. So what this does is a recorded document that would go in so that subsequent purchasers of the home know that the area below base flood is not considered habitable space, cannot be used for habitable space. The controversial provision that's arisen is number 6. We had a property owner who applied for a building permit, apparently with below flood enclosed area, which Linda knows more of the details on, that I do not know the specific house. But they are reluctant and do not want to sign number 6, which would allow for an inspection. This is the standard language. It says the owner and subsequent owners agree to allow a representative of the city of Madeira Beach in the premises to verify compliance with this agreement. The city representative will provide at least 48 hours notice of such a visit. It is up to you whether or not you want to include this provision. It's a policy direction. There is a potential that you may lose certain eligible points in the CRS system, which if not replaced by other points that you could gain in other ways, which you still may be able to gain in other ways, even in addition to this, you might have a higher or lower rating for FEMA purposes, and flood insurance rates could be affected. If you were to want to modify this, I think it could be made slightly clearer by saying that the owner and subsequent owners agree to allow a representative of the City of Madeira Beach to inspect any enclosed space below the base flood elevation for the limited purpose of verifying compliance with this agreement. The city representative will provide at least 48 hours notice of such visit. If you wanted, you could also further limit it to a building official or code enforcement inspector. But the idea here is if you are going to get a permit to enclose space below the base flood elevation, the city is asking you to agree to allow inspection of that space now and in the future within 48 hours. What happens is some of our other FEMA homes where we have used mitigation grant monies to elevate the home, as soon as the CO is issued, additional improvements were made. Sometimes above base flood elevation, sometimes below, but they caused problems with FEMA, who came down and did inspections and found that they were exceeding the work that was permitted after the COs had been issued. In terms of legalities, without this agreement, it's very difficult to do an inspection of enclosed space on a residential property. We would have to go to circuit court first and obtain a search warrant, and that's something we could do. But this agreement to allow an inspection, if they do not agree to allow, when it actually happens, we could take this agreement into the circuit court judge and say, here is where they agreed. We want a search warrant for the limited purpose of checking the below base flood enclosure for any habitable space. I think there's some members of the public and perhaps an attorney for the applicant who may want to address the commission.
And Madam Mayor, if I may, consistent with the attorney's discussions, we have met with the property owner that has brought this to our attention. Staff is not aware of any other individuals that have the concerns that have been raised associated with the provision that's in the agreement now. However, consistent with the recommendation to the modification that the attorney has proffered, staff would be comfortable with the language as articulated. We think it still accomplishes the effective goal, and we would not put ourselves in risk to lose any points or credits associated with the flood insurance program. But certainly the property owner's concern is, invasion of privacy, their private property owner rights and those types of things. So those were some of the concerns that were levied. But I do believe that their representatives are here so they can provide some perspective to the board if you would so wish to do so.
Absolutely.
Is on?
There
Yep.
we go.
My name is Patrick Sullivan. I'm with the a contractor, builder, general, GHD Construction Services. We currently own property in the city. We have projects up for consideration in zoning. We've built single-family houses in Madeira Beach, and we are currently building houses in the city of Madeira Beach. We constantly meet with customers who are looking to take product houses that are lower, below the BFE, and are looking to properly raise them in new construction. We specialize in affordable new construction, and we're doing a lot of it within Madeira Beach and up and down the beaches. This particular agreement is the non-conversion agreement, and in order to build new construction, the structure itself has to be elevated, and anything below the BFE has to be proper as far as building materials that are used to make sure that they're water resistant. There can be no electrical or plumbing or anything below the BFE. You're only allowed 300 square feet of storage. They're very strict on what they allow below the BFE. Every new home that gets built is 100% within compliance to that. All the owners customers that we deal with understand what it means to build up and what it's going to take and what they're going to have to sacrifice in order to do that, not only just in costs, but also in the functionality that they're going to lose when they raise their home. This particular customer, we've been building in the city for a long time. This has just come up on, the city has just started using this type of agreement. As the attorney had just mentioned, it is a stock agreement, so it came directly from FEMA. None of the language has been changed. Although it's new to this city, it isn't new to other cities around the United States. It is something that FEMA has been looking to do for a long time. The only municipality that has been doing it is Treasure Island, and Treasure Island is very similar to the city of Madeira Beach, as well as its waterways on the intercoastal, to its beaches, and size and scope of its municipality. They have a non-conversion agreement that's fair, that doesn't have this number 6 in it, and we're looking to get this strike. And it basically is just common sense fair that, hey, if you build underneath the, and I suggest that everyone should review that non-conversion agreement to see what Treasure Island's been doing for years. And it basically just says, hey, you know, if you're building underneath the floodplain, you can't go back in and convert that space. And everyone's fine with that, everyone we talk to. A lot of the problems that we see when we talk to customers, and we talk to a lot of them, is just granting someone the right to come in at any point in time to your home. And everyone wants to be fair, and if they do go back and convert the property, there's mechanisms of which the municipality has to get in to do an inspection. I think it's the automatic right that the city is requesting be relinquished and granted to them that the customers have an issue with. As this city in particular continues to grow and continues to see older product raised, and you know, Linda Portal's doing a great job going through the zoning code and making it more of a buildable city within all the different size lots that you guys have, and you're going to see a lot of new raised nice product, and this is going to become an issue for you. And you currently have CRS points. And in order to get CRS points, you don't have to do this agreement. You can do some form of this agreement, or you can do the exact, this is the highest level of the agreement. So you still get CRS points if you strike number 6. You just wouldn't get as many of them. And I can see it's a struggle for your condo owners that are above the BFE to want the lower rates and want you to struggle for every CRS point you can get. But there are the homeowners that are going to be building in this municipality that want their municipality to be fair to them. And number 6, we just feel, and the customers that come in just feel it's not fair. Everyone wants to do the right thing, but they have an issue with that. We have one particular customer, and he's here to speak today. He bought a waterfront property. It was an older, not in that good a condition. He bought, lived in it, and made the decision to knock it down. He went and paid and had architectural plans done and did a fully compliant home on the property. He met with us, contracted with us to build the home. We went in for the permit, and one of the, after final review of his home, not before, after, this came up as a condition, a new condition of which the city was going to have the owner sign and then record, so it does go on to all future property owners. And it's not the agreement so much as the issue, it's the number 6 that was an issue. He has now decided to, he's deciding whether or not if to currently build based off of the board's decision to strike or not strike number 6. So this is a very real thing. It's just implemented by the city. You're going to hear more of this through realtors and just current property owners that have bought, that are looking to someday raise. So we just wanted to bring it to your attention that no one is dissatisfied with the actual agreement itself. It's just number 6 in the 4th Amendment right to just grant someone access to your home. So I can answer any questions if you like.
Yeah, I've got a question, please. Let me figure out how to phrase it. Anybody else have a question? I understood part of what you said, but I guess I didn't really maybe understand the underlying part. If a buyer comes in okay, and we'll need a mortgage, so we'll have to have FEMA, okay, we'll have to include their FEMA insurance. Are you saying, or are you not saying, that the inclusion of number 6, okay, will that jeopardize anybody else's, will that jeopardize Madeira Beach's discounts as a whole, or can it in the future?
Let me go first, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
With that answer before you go.
Okay.
To explain a little background. People always get confused with regard to FEMA. FEMA has two divisions, two hats, two wings. And some of the problems that happen with FEMA is those two divisions are not always talking, and they're two separate programs. So one is the FEMA program for CRS. It's a community-based system, a community rating system. FEMA doesn't mandate that we adopt floodplain regulations. It says if you would like to adopt floodplain regulations, you will be eligible for flood insurance. And depending on whether you're at base flood elevation or base flood elevation +1, depending on whether your building department does inspections, depending on the whole, how vigorous your floodplain management program and your local ordinance is, and depending on how diligent you are in following up to make sure that the homes stay compliant after you build them, that there's no illegal base flood elevation enclosures. They'll assign you points, and those points go into a CRS rating system. And the other side of FEMA that issues actual, works with flood insurance companies, those flood insurance rates are going to be dependent upon the CRS ratings that FEMA is awarding the city. It's a very rigorous review. It happens every couple of years. Small cities like Yankeetown, they put everything down and they do nothing but the CRS review for like 2 weeks. Everyone comes in, gathers all the building permits, puts them all together, proves that they all met base flood with the base flood elevation certificates. We pull up public information brochures like these, not recycling, but hurricane ones and flood elevation ones, show what we're doing for public outreach, for education. All of those things add up to points. So the idea is to get more points and not to lose points. When you lose points, you usually try to regain those points. So if we don't have 6, we will lose points. It doesn't mean that you have to have points, it's purely voluntary, but it does affect the flood insurance rates that other people have. The other thing that's going on with FEMA and flood insurance rates is that a few years ago, you may have heard about this, Congress said, we're going to make flood insurance based on actuarial rates. You know, they were subsidizing flood insurance, and so now they're not going to subsidize anymore, they said in the beginning. They were going to phase it out after 4 years, and you would pay the actual insurance justified rate, how much it costs to insure your property based on all the math. And that caused flood insurance rates to begin to go through the roof. People were beginning to pay almost as much on their flood insurance as they were paying on their mortgages. So then Congress repealed it back, delayed it some more, so it's still delayed again. We still have not felt the full actual rate for flood insurance, which is coming in the near future, if Congress holds true to that and doesn't change it. You don't have to have flood insurance as a homeowner. You don't have to buy it unless you have a mortgage. Then the bank will require you to have flood insurance because your house is collateral for the mortgage that you have. And they want it to be insured. If you do have flood insurance and your house is hurt and damaged in a hurricane, they do not pay the full cost of elevating your home to meet the new base flood elevation. So sometimes even though you get the insurance, it's not enough to replace your house. So that is also happening. With the higher with a higher CRS rating and lower flood rates, it's easier, you're closer in how much it costs to raise your house, elevate your house, fix your house, use how much you're going to get back in flood insurance and how much flood insurance costs. But if you are adversely affecting your CRS rating, then you're adversely affecting the ability of homeowners to obtain affordable flood insurance. So I forgot what your original question was, but.
The original question was, and I think that I basically
Okay.
got the,
Debbie.
I got the comments that I, sorry.
And let him go
I think
too,
I
yeah.
did get the comments that I was, I think that I understood, okay, is that, I understood what you're talking
Okay.
about. The original question was, could potentially our citizens in Madeira Beach who own, our property owners, who have to have FEMA, okay, who have to have FEMA insurance because they have mortgages, okay, could they be jeopardized in this whole scenario if the agreement with some type of wording for number 6 is not used? And I would have to think, of course, they would be jeopardized. Because if you get more points, that's the better off. I mean, Madeira Beach might have gotten 21%, and which is great, you know, but look at a community that maybe only gets 8% because they've allowed these things to happen. I think it's counteractive because we all know that FEMA flood insurance is for rising water. You know, why would anybody even want to build on the ground anymore when the potential for rising water, but that's another issue. Okay, thank you very much, Patrick Sullivan. I appreciate it.
Mr. Sullivan, I have a question. According to this here statement here, is this a one-time deal, or is it during the whole process that the building or reconstruction is being done that a representative comes into the premises to take an inspection of it? Is it just a one-time thing?
In new construction or in any type of construction, if it's a remodel or if it's a new construction, what has to happen is you have to sit there. Well, first off, if you're any property that's built in the base flood elevation immediately gets stamped by FEMA, and it gets heightened in its plan review in any municipality, including this municipality. At that point in time, you'd have to take the land value out and then look at the structure's value. The structure's value, then, and that's according to the tax assessor, that structure's value, you can only improve your home up to 50% of that structure's value before you have to bring everything into compliance. And what that means is demoing the house and now going up to an elevated home. So that's on the renovation side. We deal in the new construction side, and people have these homes, which everyone knows are all around here, that people have bought and tried to do renovations, and they can't for that exact reason. So we work with them to build above the BFE. In that particular case, then the whole structure has to be compliant right from the beginning, and that has to be the plans have to come into the building department and go through zoning and go through the building department. Zoning to make sure that it's elevated according to the above the BFE, and the building department to make sure that all the materials, that it's built according to the way FEMA would like it built, as far as the building materials that are used, and that there's no electric or mechanical or plumbing below the BFE. So any new construction automatically is compliant with FEMA and has $500 flood insurance rates. So and this particular customer who is here today, and I think would like to speak, that his concern is now he's built the home and spent the money, the time, the effort, and the investment in Madeira Beach, built the home, and now he has to sit there and grant someone the right to come into his house at any point in time within 48 hours notice, and that, everyone wants to be fair, and if you do new construction, and your area below the BFE is compliant, the city wants it to be compliant, and they have mechanisms other than this to do that. Every customer we deal with understands what needs to be done to build it up above, and they want to stay compliant. They understand.
I guess what I don't understand is looking at this, it's only, if someone builds today, a year from now, the city can't come in. It's like, if they had, and I might be
This would
reading
allow
wrong.
you to come in
Yes.
after a certificate of occupancy a year from now or 5 years from now.
Okay, but then once you go in, you can't go in again.
No, you can
And
go
if
in again
someone
under this.
sells the house, or there's a permit for the house to do work on the house, am I correct?
No, well,
This-
right now, you would have to go get a search warrant if you didn't have this agreement, but we've been signing these agreements with people. So when the houses change hands, or if someone sees work going on, or if there's, probable cause, or someone sees or reports an enclosure, the building official will go and inspect. We have had cases where we've gotten FEMA grants to elevate homes. I don't know whether GHD Services has been the contractors to build any of those. And have you worked on any of those?
We've talked to a lot of customers about them, and we're aware. We build the similar type of product.
We've had 4 or 5 of those where after we left, and after this final inspection was done, after the certificate of occupancy was done, additional improvements were made without permits. And as a result of that, the money that we fronted to the homeowner to front to the contractor may not get repaid by FEMA. And so it's even in projects where we have actually put up our own city money, and I think something like total of $1 million for 4 or 5 different houses. Like 3 or 4 or 5 of those houses, we've had instances where they built extra balconies, where they put more space than they were supposed to, and they did all that without permits, either with the original contractor or with a new contractor or just as an owner builder without obtaining and pulling building permits. So this is meant to, this is FEMA's effort at ensuring that nothing happens in the below flood enclosure after the building inspector leaves and the house is CO'd.
None of the customers have a problem. If you do work that's not permitted, then you definitely should not have that. The city should have a mechanism to go in, and that work should not be acceptable. This here is, and no one has a problem with the conversion or the non-conversion. No one wants to convert, and if they convert, then the city should actually, they should come down on them and hold them accountable. This is more of the Fourth Amendment right to sit there and just come in within 48 hours notice. It's not the non-conversion portion of this agreement. Everyone understands that they're not allowed to convert, and if they convert, there will be consequences. And taking out number 6 certainly does that for all parties involved. It's just the Fourth Amendment right to not have someone come in within 48 hours notice.
I'm not really sure why, if you're in compliant, you would object to that. The only thing that would bother me is that maybe it needs a clause in there about probable cause. Because without that, then the city or whoever could say, well, we're going to just keep coming after you to make sure every week that you're not doing anything.
That's a constitutional right, Fourth Amendment, and we have that right, and so you have to usually go and get a search warrant. In order to do that, you have to show probable cause, and that's the check and balance that I think, and I'll let the customer talk about his issue with it. It's not the non-conversion, it's exactly that. It's there needs to be some sort of check and balance, and he doesn't want to give up a right of which he has a constitutional right to. Just going to pass the mic.
My name is David Ronaldo. I am just the supervisor of the residential construction for the company. And this isn't a construction issue because Frank, the building inspector, he goes through the houses and makes sure there's nothing we can do before they can even move into the house. So this isn't a construction issue. This is once the construction's done, the homeowner moves in, the city can come in and within 48 hours notice and look at their house, do what they need to do once a year on just 48 hours notice. Hey, we're going to come into your house on Tuesday. See you then. That's where the customer has trouble. This isn't a construction issue because we can't build the product out of the scope of the work that's only allowed. So Frank wouldn't allow it to fly if the building inspector, if we did it improperly. So it has really very little to do with construction and more to do with the homeowner, especially our customer that was not aware of this until after he had already demolished his house. He did the demo in his house. He did everything that was done, and then all of a sudden, oh wait, before we can get the permit, now you got to sign this agreement saying we can come into your house whenever we want. And he said, whoa, wait a minute, I don't, I don't know if I like that. So it's not really a construction issue. First of all, it's a timing because he had already started his permit. Second of all, we can't build the house out of code, so it has very little to do with that and more, again, on his personal right.
I'm the customer. Hi. My name is Paul. Address is 352 145th Street, right down the road here. Beautiful lot. Like everybody explained, I bought the house about 1.5 years ago.
Could you please state your last name for the record?
Kuiken, K-U-I-K-E-N. It's a tough one. About 1.5 years, I bought it. Wanted to decide what to do. It was an old, dilapidated house. Needed a new roof. It was better just to build it on stilts. put a lot of money into it, wanting to make sure everything was under code and everything. Again, that non-convergence agreement is fine. It's just the thought of somebody saying, hey, we're coming in your house to do an inspection. And I travel a lot, so I could be out of town. I don't want somebody knocking on my door. It's a beautiful home. It's much like the one right over here, and they're enclosed completely. It's my front door. You're coming in my front door, and you're just telling me you're going to show up without a warrant. That kind of bothers me. It's, again, a Fourth Amendment. I think it would bother anybody. I'm surprised that they even put it there. Is there another way to get CRS points? I mean, what about other people?
There's all kinds of other ways. So if you have an objection or don't want to do it, certainly it's almost like I would say a political question too. If you're a libertarian, for example, you may think this is an infringement of individual rights, and you might say, well, I believe in individual rights and property rights, and I'm against a broad, expansive waiver of search warrants. So you should go get a search warrant if they want. You could try to go and find other ways of obtaining CRS points that you already haven't exhausted. I know that we're always trying to find new ways to get CRS points, and we try to exhaust every potential one we can.
Could not this form that I have to sign have been given to me when I bought the property? I mean, every house should have this attached to their deed, so that when you come in to buy something, you know what you're getting yourself
That's
into.
where this happens, yeah. Once this gets signed, this gets recorded in the
I understand, but
county, then it gets attached to all the deeds, so.
before I bought the property, I should have had to sign that.
You were not, you were probably, your house was not raised above base flood elevation. It was probably an older home.
But any house
Be firm.
that gets
Any
sold should
home
have
that-
to.
Yeah, I think this is since a certain time. All the other homes have signed it. So if you were buying an existing or constructed home already that had a deed, then you would have seen this in there. If you would like to put probable cause, we could put probable cause in there. It would require us then to go to a probable cause determination hearing in front of a judge, but that's not too onerous. You know, we could do that. FEMA does not like that because they want the ability to go in by agreement of the landowner at the time they obtain their building permit. Another alternative is to say something in the ordinances like no structure below base flood elevation shall be fully enclosed. Then you could see from the outside. Again, this would only apply to fully enclosed structures below base flood elevation because you can't see inside. And it's not, I'm sure this contractor is not doing it, but what has happened in other places is that the homeowners themselves do the improvements and they turn them into habitable space.
So you're basically talking about the garage?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a garage and they turn into units. They turn in,
Right.
you know, I don't know if you've come to some of our code enforcement hearings, but we do have some garages that are being used as rental apartments and that kind of thing.
And Madam Mayor, if I may, we've also, the previous language that was in the first draft of the agreement just allowed for the city to have carte blanche to be able to provide notice and say, hey, we're coming in today. We've actually backed it up to say within 48-hour notice to effectively allow for us to come and look at the property. Our concern is that we cannot tell you today what the impact would be as far as the points lost and if it would have an impact on the rates that your entire community experiences. If we are to go and look for additional points, we're always going to go and look for additional points, but is it going to be something that mitigates what the impact if we change or modify or completely strike out this particular section? So staff has attempted to make some changes and modifications. Other communities don't have it in there, but I believe Director Portell told me prior to my beginning with the organization that this board has provided direction to staff to go forward and to attempt to obtain as many points as possible with the hope to keep our rates as low as possible. So staff is asking for direction to see where the board is with respect to this item. You can tell us that you'd like to strike item 6 out, or you can tell us that you prefer to have it modified as the attorney stated, or to keep it as written. It basically is a document that, in its original form, is directly provided by FEMA, and I would assume that if any entity would make sure that it wasn't an encroachment or an infringement on personal property owner rights, I would hope that the federal government would actually do their due diligence with respect to making sure that these types of agreements don't, in essence, violate your Fourth Amendment right on lawful search and seizure, et cetera. So those are just some things for you to consider as part of the public policy making direction. Staff will do whatever the board wishes to do, but from our point, we think the modification is a reasonable modification to say that within 48 hours notice. We're not actively hiring a new staff to go out there and check on all these particular issues, but in the short time that I've been here in the organization, I cannot count on two hands how many situations whereby we've seen those areas below base flooded elevation changed into, additional living spaces, dens, et cetera. So it's not something that isn't happening in our community. Effectively, it is.
Can I suggest something? If you need CRS points, why don't you put it to deeds so that purchasers like me, before you buy it, know what I have to deal with? Because I'm to the point where we're just getting the permitting, and all of a sudden it's kind of like borderline extortion. I've got to sign this to build my house that I've already bought the property.
I would think the realtor should be responsible for doing that, wouldn't you?
You're right. Why, that way, when you sell the property, then they sign it, you'll get your CRS points, and you'll have all the points you want. But take off 6. Don't let me give up my Fourth Amendment right of privacy. That's all I ask.
Well, I don't necessarily have to see it as a Fourth Amendment right, because nobody's going to come there. They can't come into your home when you're not there.
48-hour notice.
Well, yes, but how are they
They
gonna
might
get
tell me I have to have somebody there. And again, the Fourth Amendment, the beautiful thing about the Fourth Amendment is privacy. Privacy. It's just that we are allowed to, have whatever we want, and nobody can, it's a beautiful thing. So why do we have to give it up to build a house?
Well, there must be some better way to word this then, because I understand the city's point. People are violating that, and there has to be a mechanism to
Sure.
correct that. If we can put probable cause and maybe so often, I'm not sure, but I think it needs to be reworded.
Yeah, you should have to get a warrant to go in. All right, thanks.
My name's Terry Weiser. I am a realtor in Madeira Beach.
Can we
Last
have your
year
address, please?
Pardon?
Can we have your address for the record, please?
Address, 340 56th Place, St. Pete.
Thank you.
Sold homes last year, this wasn't in effect. Sold homes that are just being completed right now. They're just now getting their COs. They're just now being presented with this form. It's never, 99.9% of the people out here don't even know anything about it. You probably didn't even know anything about it until they brought it up to you. When I read the forms state that the inspection will be done once a year. It has to be done once a year. It also states that FEMA has to have a report from you once a year. It also states that your inspector is the one that's going to be doing it. So now who's going to pay for his car, his insurance, his liability? What happens if we have problems with maybe he goes into a home and there's a child problem, sexual problems, or he drives in the grass and puts ruts in the yard? Who's going to pay to replace it? What's the liability? There's a lot of unanswered questions. It needs to be studied more. And it hasn't been challenged because this is brand new. I've been in the business since 1976. This is my first customer I've ever had to do it with. Never knew anything about it. So even with our due diligence, we still wouldn't have known anything about it. All right, there's just a lot of unanswered questions. And the way that Treasure Island is doing it, they are allowing it up to when the house is getting the CO. But again, they'll go with their search and seizures, get the warrant when they need to. We're getting the government involved too much. We're going to end up having to get taxes to pay for all this. So you're going to have to tax your customers to pay for all these inspections. Thank you.
It doesn't say this has to be done on a yearly basis. It doesn't say any of that in here. It wasn't a conversation, it was a conversation.
It doesn't have the once a year, you don't have to do once a year under this
And
agreement.
it doesn't say you have to file it with FEMA. It doesn't say any of that on.
Well, this has to be recorded. At the bottom, there is recorded.
Actually, I can see where it has to be recorded, but it doesn't say on a yearly basis.
When you do the CRS review, it's every few years. They'll want to see all these for the homes that have below flood enclosures. So that's why it's such a tedious process. It really takes a long time. The building official has to, and the El Carrier and Linda, they all have to get together, pull all the building permits that were issued in the last year and demonstrate to FEMA that they've been done in accordance with our floodplain ordinance and FEMA regulations.
So it would have
So
to be
we
done.
do it for every house. I mean, they look at each and every house
But I can't see.
that has a building
Looking at
permit
somebody's
in the
garage is
year.
gonna be that big a deal. Looking at somebody's garage is that big a deal. So, I don't see the big deal. I'm looking at my garage. Nothing.
And I still have to go back to the original thought, and I might need to be educated a little bit more, but I really think we have to protect the community as a whole. And if this is the way to do it, with the inclusion of that 6, to make sure that we, I guess, dot all the i's and cross all the t's, then it's my feeling that in one way or another, it has to be done. There's been so much non-compliance. I just, there has been a lot of non-compliance everywhere.
You could add in the third whereas a condition of building permit and certificate of occupancy. That would ensure that when someone's going to buy a house and they go pull a building permit, they're going to know that this is something they have to sign to get the below flood enclosure. I mean, one of their choices is to build without any enclosed space below base flood elevation. Have the true stilt home without having an enclosed garage.
Your wording is so much, I think your wording that you just did is better than that 6.
The longer one that I
okay,
did
so-
earlier, yeah, that's just adding to 6.
Right.
What happens if you inspect someone and they have done something? What's the consequences then?
Then they're given a time to come into compliance.
Yes, they
If they
go
don't
through the
come into
code.
compliance, they go through code enforcement. Code enforcement says, is there a violation? And they take the evidence, and then they set up another time to come into compliance. If they don't meet that time to comply, a daily penalty is established, which continues to accrue until the house is brought into compliance. Sometimes it's not until the property is sold to a new owner and they find that there's a code enforcement fine of $50,000 that they bring it into compliance. Sometimes cities will, and it's very rare, but once in a while a city will foreclose on a property that has outstanding code enforcement issues. Usually if it's the property that should be condemned or is unlivable or is a nuisance or a crack house, then once in a while they'll go ahead and foreclose on one. But typically local governments won't foreclose on
So
code
if-
enforcement violations.
So if we go in and they put a bathroom on the ground floor, then they've got to take that bathroom out?
Yeah, take it out, or it's $250 a day, or $500 a day, or $50 a day, whatever the special magistrate assesses as a fine.
I guess where I'm coming from, if it gives any guidance at all, again, is that we need to protect as much of the community as we can. I think that as people move in and purchase houses that they're required to get the mortgages, okay, I just wouldn't want to take a chance in going, in abusing any of these things and abusing anything and having a lower percentage rate or a lower discount be assessed, and those people to have to suffer for it because someone else didn't do maybe perhaps their due diligence, or their realtors or their lawyers or whoever to make them be in compliance. So there's got to be a way to work it out.
Well, the way I see it, Ralph, the way you worded it before,
Yeah.
I think that's very clear. As far as that, providing at least a 48-hour notice, I don't see anything wrong with that. And if you're not going to be home, you know, you let them know, I'm not going to be here. Can we reschedule it or something like that? I don't see anything wrong with that, but, you know, just to give them a 48-hour notice, you know, it's not like they're going to pop into your house one afternoon and say, I'm here, let me in to inspect the house. You know, they are notifying the residents. So again, rewording number 6, like you talked about earlier, I would go with that. And also with the 48-hour notice of such visit, I would kind of keep that in there too, because I feel that that's adequate. If, you know, if they're not going to be home, they can let you know, we're not going to be home, and maybe reschedule if necessary.
If they go and they knock on the door and they say, you can't come in today, sorry, I didn't have 48 hours, I didn't see the 48 hours, or I'm not going to let you in, then we would go and get probable cause from a judge before we went into a house. We wouldn't barge our way in, obviously, we'd have to go get a warrant, but this would be something that we'd use to give to the judge to say, we had an agreement that they would allow us to verify that the below flood enclosed space was not being used for habitable space. And then we would get a limited search warrant for that purpose. I mean, if they went in and they found a hydroponic marijuana operation, then that would be outside the bounds of the search warrant, so probably would be excluded from evidence. But it would be permissible to go in and look for habitable space below base flood enclosure.
How about if you said 48 hours, but some kind of reasonable extension depending on circumstances?
Or provide reasonable notice of at least 48 hours.
Okay. Any more discussion?
I could even put in notice shall be sent to, and then put email or phone number or something in here if you wanted. They could fill in whatever they would like. Reasonable notice shall be delivered to, and then leave a blank, so they would fill in where they want the notice to go to.
Any more additions?
No, I agree with Commissioner Hodges and with the mayor.
All right. We're going to now go to agenda item C, the Old Salt Fishing Foundation King of the Beach event review.
Madam Mayor, members of the board, this item before you is a recap of the Old Salts Fishing Foundation King of the Beach, and I have asked for the Recreation Director, Mr. Hatch, to provide you an update. He has served as the point person and the contract administrator since the contract has been executed, and we do have representatives here from the Old Salts Fishing Foundation that can provide some additional information if needed. So, Director Hatch.
Afternoon again, Mayor and Commissioners. Per the contract that was put together between the city and the Old Salt Fishing Foundation for their event on April 26th through 28th, we have followed through with the process, the application process, the contract, and frankly, outside of the contract, in my nearly 4 years being here, this is I believe was one of the most successful events from an operations standpoint between cooperation with Old Salt and the city. We didn't report any issues back with the field. There was no damage that we were looking to get replaced after the event. The stipulation that they pay for a portion of the refurbishing of the field was done so, and actually was completed. The refurbishment of the field was actually done last week, just before the rain, with some fertilizer, so we'll be in great shape here shortly. I can go item by item through the contract if you like, or, it's from a city standpoint, from the recreation standpoint, following through the contract, they completed or exceeded every item that we set forth per our review. So I guess if you'd like, I can go through it, or you can just lead off with questions if you prefer.
I have a question. Right here on the front page, it says $1,500 refundable damage deposit, and then it says right below there, $6,880 less refundable deposit. What's the difference?
So the total payments to the city was $8,380. Take away the $1,500, they paid $6,880. That's just.
That's what they paid, the $6,880.
Yes, ma'am. That includes an additional, they on top of their payments, well, included in that was an additional $2,500 donation to the recreation
Well,
center.
the donation shouldn't have anything to do with it, because it's over and above what
Okay.
the actual things that we're trying to get the money back to recoup for things that happened to the ball field or that services the city provided. That's where we're at. Anything donations, any of that is totally outside any of what goes on here.
Okay, I was just trying to include all the numbers for
Right.
a fair evaluation.
But Director Hatch, correct me if I'm wrong, the contribution that was made is explicitly geared towards the improvements to the ball fields.
Well, it was a
associated
total,
with the impact.
it was, the check that was presented at the event was a total of $5,000. $2,500 of it was that aeration replenishment of the field. The other $25,000 was earmarked for the recreation activities of the summer camp.
Okay.
So in that $6,880, it included the $2,500?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any discussion?
No questions.
Okay.
Nope, it's going to be great. Can't wait for it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And the last item on the agenda will be the water taxi agreement and discussion.
Madam Mayor, members of the board, the item before you this afternoon is to discuss the agreement between the City of Madeira Beach and Hubbard Sea Adventures Incorporated. Pursuant to the direction provided by the board, there was discussions that ensued between Hubbard Sea Adventures and staff as it relates to the $25,000 contribution that's made by the City of Madeira Beach to assisting the offset of the expenditures for the water taxi. This particular agreement began once the city put out a request for proposals for the provision of services for a water taxi. We all know that waterborne transportation is something that is one of the oldest, if not the oldest form of transportation here in the U.S. and worldwide. And so staff has had some conversations with representatives from the Hubbard Sea Adventures, and they are here to be able to have some additional discussions with the board pursuant to the conversations that we've had. There has been discussions about the $25,000 contribution and that the city is looking at potentially making some tweaks or modifications or even potentially eliminating that contribution amount. I would like for the board to know that the fiscal year 2019 budget does still have that $25,000 in the budget in the event that the board wishes to effectively remove that. You have two ways to do that. One, you have a section in the agreement, section 7, subsection B, item C, that you can terminate the agreement without cause and provide 30 days notice. Then you have another section That is Section 14, Title City Funding, that effectively, if the board does not appropriate monies in a future budget, that effectively that $25,000 contribution and that agreement goes away. However, it is staff's recommendation that in the event that the board wants to make some modifications and tweaks to the agreement and possibly eliminate some form or some variation or the $25,000 in its entirety, that there is some value to still preserve the relationship and the service that's being provided. So there's some things that I think that mutually both parties can benefit from, allowing for them to still utilize the docks here, or to be able to push off from here to co-promotions, co-marketing, those types of things. But I think it's appropriate to allow for the representatives from Hubbard Sea Adventures to provide a update to the board and then ask any questions. I have communicated to the representative that we have about 15 minutes to be able to do that. And should you have any questions, staff stands prepared to answer those.
Good afternoon. My name's Corey Hubbard. I'm employed by Hubbard's Marina, and a project of Hubbard's is Tampa Bay Ferry, which operates the Madeira Beach water taxi. Jonathan told me I was given 45 minutes for my comments. Today, I'll go ahead and only take 30. So, yes, I'm just kidding. Just trying to get a reaction. Keep it lighthearted. Oh, good. Yes. I just wanted to start out by asking you guys some questions, because I was told that you had some time with staff to discuss the ferry one-on-one over the past couple of weeks. Is that what happened? Did you guys get any time with staff to talk about the ferry over the past couple of weeks? Great. And in that case, now that I'm here, since I wasn't present in those conversations, I wanted to know if there was any outstanding questions that I could possibly answer.
Hey, Corey. I wanted to know, is there any way we can put a city logo on your ferries?
Yes, if the contract was retained, of course, we could do any additions. I know when we originally won the RFP and were in negotiations with the city, they had requested a total rebranding, which we kind of calmly had to decline because it just would be too costly. But of course, we can add both to it's already displayed on our website, but to any collateral material or to the side of the boat, we'd be more than happy.
Okay, because it does say Tampa Bay, and I just want to know if we can get Madeira Beach in there someplace too.
The reason it does is because the parent company that we operate has two other routes that run from Fort DeSoto to Shell Key and to Egmont Key. And of course, that traverses the mouth of Tampa Bay. So we simply refer to the company as that, as well as I shared with you last time, that's a historic name for the Beeline ferry that went from Piney Point down in St. Pete over to Bradenton. So it's a nostalgic reference as well. Well, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I don't have any questions, but I did say that I would ride the ferry before I made any decisions, and I did that recently. And it was a great boat ride, and the staff on board they were wonderful. They even stopped to help a couple people who looked like they were drowning, but it turned out fine. My only question, or not question, but statement is, I would find it hard to support this because I see it more as a boat ride. But like I said, a very nice one. But if it takes me an hour and a half to get from one place to another, then that's not a taxi.
I appreciate you bringing that up. I did, in fact, view the last budget workshop where you did have a few minutes to discuss this, and I heard your comments and understand them, and would like to address them if possible. I do pretty much want to be clear with you that I understand today is not really a day for persuasion. I understand that the majority of the board has already made up their minds, and I'm really here to simply provide a little last-minute thoughts. But to your point, I wonder, because in this instance that we've spoken to with staff before, we welcome, the door is always open to collaborate on ways that you feel that we could be improving our business and be improving the service that we provide. But unfortunately, those conversations have never taken place, and we've simply felt quite alienated as well as vilified as this sort of business with their palm out looking for a government handout. And unfortunately, that's just not the way that we view ourselves, but potentially that broken down conversation has been to blame for why you don't feel that the market or the product that we bring to the table is adequate. Because if you look at, for example, the PSTA bus lines, do you look at the trolley on Gulf Boulevard and say, oh, that's just a trolley? Like, I can't escape the fact that this boat is on the water and it is a boat ride, but the fact that it presents a different thing to different people, as well as it's understood by other communities as a form of transportation. It's simply the way that you view it. And I understand if you're having a good time, it's difficult to think of the government being involved with it, but that's really just the nature of the business, as well as it's the nature of the parent business, which as a private entity, which of course I'll get into in my comments, it's become difficult for us to bring something which could potentially mimic real transportation if we had an active city partnership and a city really believed in it and said, look, we need to make these changes in order to get a better product. That door was always open. I do feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I do feel that kind of the ship has sailed on this conversation, and I don't think that anything I can say to you today would really change our minds. I think Commissioner Hodges had made reference to before that we've kind of beat this to a dead horse, and I certainly can understand and recognize that. So I just was basically going to spend my comments today thanking you for the opportunity and just saying that it's been a distinct privilege to be able to play a small part in the transportation conversation on the Gulf beaches. I attend every Big C meeting and just get really excited about the future of our communities. And of course, as a private operator, I recognize that our dream of being involved in a public-private partnership with the city has come with a lot of battles, and some of those battles have been fought just here in front of this dais. And I recognize that kind of our floating alternative for transportation has not really been well received by this commission, and many people can make lots of assumptions as to why, but we'll just let that rest, because today I really do, like I said, recognize that our fate has been sealed, and don't want to stand here and try to persuade you anymore. I just want to leave you with some thoughts that, for example, Madeira Beach, as it stands, is a leader in waterborne transportation for South County. There's no other community south of Park Boulevard who's looking at this besides for St. Pete. I mean, on the beaches we're talking about. So it's a real shame for me to see a beach community like we have here give that up. And in my view, and in view of many others who understand this transportation, that with our current agreement, really the difficult work has been done and a lot of the hard work has already been completed. And with the City of Madeira Beach's investment, we've come to the table with boats and capital and knowledge and a wealth of experience, as well as a hefty amount of operating capital. So if we're ever to do this again, that simply just won't be present. So it's really just a shame to see that disappear. And of course, this year, as we've gained traction and can demonstrate demand, we've also been beginning to explore other public funding opportunities that could grow this service and expand it down south. So with severing this contract, we're going to have to see that go as well. So I just want to state also for the record that if you do research on waterborne transportation, if there's anyone at home watching this, it cannot be denied that government funding, whether it's in terms of capital or if it's land or if it's equipment, it's almost always present. So this contract, our contract together as a private entity and as a city, is not unique in that sense. But the bottom line is I recognize that this board does not value it, I understand, as an alternative form of transportation, and really kind of has been reluctant to partner with us to kind of transform it as such, which I also understand, and therefore you don't want to support it. So at the conclusion of this, our agreement together, which if severed today ends in 30 days, we will plan to discontinue the service, sell or relocate our assets, and then go ahead and focus on other priorities both inside the city and out. And unfortunately, in my view, and some members of the county and other members of other communities understand that the vision, I guess, for waterborne transportation, which has been a vision that's been played out for multiple decades. We know firsthand, as we were involved with this since the late 90s, trying to get a ferry down to Key West. Like I've mentioned in other times talking to you, that this has really been a pet project of our families. So the vision's really going to suffer a big setback. And it's really sad, too, because despite the fact that it will die today here in Madeira, it lives in communities just a few miles away from here, in St. Petersburg and in Clearwater and moving over into Tampa. So today it dies in Madeira, but it'll die along with the potential for other federal and state grants to support docks, bigger terminals, more vessels, and more operating capital. It's also going to die along with the goal of connecting to connecting Clearwater down to St. Pete Beach and even on to Anna Maria by water. It's dying along with the potential for Madeira Beach residents to get on a boat and go to Johns Pass for free. It's dying along with the opportunity for residents and for visitors to see our community in a way that was historically only available for the wealthy and the privileged among us. And it's dying along with the opportunity to partner with local bodies, whether it's charities, partner with the city for events or holiday functions. And what we'll really hate is that in future conversations about congestion on the roads will congest and the water is going to remain empty, and we're just going to hate to stand by and have to see that happen. And we'll hate that our attempt to partner with the city to provide a valuable product to its residents will also have failed. So if you, just closing, if you find yourself in other big cities like San Francisco, New York, Tampa, Clearwater, or even St. Pete, and you fancy having a water taxi here in Madeira or having a fun waterborne way to navigate the city, of course you know where to find us. We're located just down the road. And with that, I'll go ahead and finally leave you after so many weeks and months, and I just appreciate so much your consideration up until this point. Commissioner Douthat, your decision to renew the contract previously was greatly appreciated. And I feel, had a lot of productive conversations since, and possibly in the future can revisit this.
You know, Corey, I'd just like to kind of say, since this came up, I've gotten a lot of calls. And the two biggest things that people complained about was, number one, that none of the other cities are supporting you other than us. You know, they say, why is just Madeira Beach? Why isn't Treasure Island? Why isn't Reddington, wherever, supporting you also? Why is it all on our back? That was number one. And number two thing that most of the calls were about was, you know, why are we subsidizing a private business? You know, why, if we're subsidizing you, excuse me, why isn't Joe's Pizza over here? Why aren't we subsidizing him or whatever? So that was the main calls that I got, you know, and I got a lot of them, I'll be very honest with you. So I just wanted to give you that, people have said to me. So, thank you.
Of course, in my view, I could, thoroughly answer those, but I'll go ahead and I think I've done that in the past already. But if you ever want to introduce, if anybody ever wants to get coffee in the city who's, I really liked that, but I didn't like this element, and they want to learn more about it, and I can show additional information, I'd be very happy to meet with them. So if that's ever a thing.
May I make a comment? First of all, I want to thank Corey for being here and for giving a lot of your time with your dad, with Mark, with regards to the water taxi. And I listened to your comments real carefully, and I want you to understand that I do value a water taxi as an alternate method of transportation, and I think that we will continually look at alternate methods of transportation within our city. And I think that it should be allowed in the city. I think that the water taxi should be allowed. I believe the water taxi should be allowed to operate and dock at a location or maybe 2 or 3 locations within our city. If it's on a city property, we would require, of course, hold harmless or whatever you call it for making the city totally not, liable for any damages. But I do think that the entire community, the residents, businesses, and tourists, all of us, I guess, would be better served if that $25,000 that we would have used in the water taxi or should be put in our infrastructure fund, and it should be used for the general, where it will impact the most, where it will impact and improve Madeira Beach is a majority for everybody, okay? And I think that some of those options that we can do it, and I'd just like for you to listen to it too, because you might be, you might even say, well, yeah, that does make sense, where it affects the most people, where the impact is the most important. Beach crossovers, maybe considering putting that money back into the infrastructure fund. Lord knows we've got enough infrastructure problems.
Splash pad.
I think, yes, splash pad, dog park, things that are really going to impact the major part of our community. And truly, I do feel as a commissioner that I am a steward of public funds. I don't believe that any funding of the water taxi is a proper use of our taxpayer funds. I don't have children or grandchildren, but I do not want to see future generations in Madeira Beach to be strangled with particularly, and I'm not saying this for the 25,000, it's just a small part of it, but I don't want future generations to be strangled with any debt to pay for infrastructure that we should be paying for and providing for now and in the future. That does not affect that $25,000, but everything goes into a big pot, and you just have to determine what is the most and best use of your money. I think that the city manager maybe should be allowed to terminate that agreement without cause by giving a 30-day advance notice in writing, and it should be dated as soon as possible after this meeting. But I really do wish Hubbard's a lot of success in the business. It's a private business, and I wish you all a lot of success and a lot of good business. Thank you, Corey. Thanks for listening.
Hey, Corey, I appreciate all the work you've done. You've really put a big effort towards this. I'm sorry to see it come. But Madeira Beach has always been the leader in a lot of new things over the years, and for some reason, we just kind of lost that, and I'm really sorry to say. You look at Clearwater, and they've got the water taxi up there, and they've expanded now into Dunedin, and that very well could have been us expanding into Treasure Island or the Reddingtons. And it would have really benefited everyone down the beach coast. So I'm really sorry that it worked out this way.
Anybody else have a comment? Thank you very much, Corey, and I agree with Commissioner Hodges. We appreciate your efforts, and maybe in time something will work out.
Madam Mayor, if I may, is it the board's direction to effectively terminate the existing agreement with providing the notice, or to go the route where you don't appropriate the $25,000 as part of the fiscal year 2019 budget? There's two situations here at play, and I just need direction from the board as to how you wish to proceed.
Can't you go with both?
Well, if you provide the notice, and let's just say, for conversation's sake, if I put out the notice tomorrow, it's the 7th, so it would be 30 days. It would take you into September. If you go the provision that that the fiscal non-funding, the agreement will continue on until the budget is adopted and the fiscal year starts October 1. So it would allow for additional time for the agreement to remain in existence.
A month.
So three weeks longer.
Yeah.
So, and for staff's perspective, I would certainly recommend that you allow to take the stance where the fiscal non-funding part is the part that I would recommend you consider, because it allows for the final payments to be allocated and assist the business that obviously is still up and operational and has some hard costs. So it doesn't lessen the impact, but it gives additional time as to where the 30-day termination would be eliminated effective September 7th. So staff's recommendation be, if the board wants to move in that space to effectively terminate the agreement with the fiscal non-funding provision in the contract, and the relationship would sever September 30th effectively, when your new fiscal year starts October 1.
Can we make that decision by consensus, or do we have to have an actual vote?
You can give me consensus.
I know we can't vote.
We're doing consensus.
You can certainly give me consensus on, and when we have as part of your budget document, when you see the budget document at first reading, staff will not include the $25,000 in there. So by effectively approving the budget on first reading, you have effectively taken official action.
So this won't be on the agenda tomorrow, is that what you're saying?
That is correct. That is correct. So, but that would be staff's recommendation.
That's fine.
All right, so we do have consensus, right?
Is that okay with you?
Doesn't matter.
We're just gonna cut it out of the budget. Okay,
Doesn't matter, you got a majority already.
all right.
Well, you're welcome to come up and talk anytime, Corey. Uh-oh. Any more discussion, anything anyone else needs to speak about before we adjourn? All right, it is 3:20 and the meeting is adjourned.